Hello, business innovators and educators. You're listening to The Enterprise Learning Architect. I'm your host, Chris Knotts, here to guide you through practices and ideas you can use to help build a culture of learning in your organization. Stay tuned to power up your professional playbook as we have conversations with exceptional people who share their experience in achieving successful learning outcomes. Ready to innovate, educate, and iterate? Let's do it. Today on the ELA podcast, we're joined by Anna Lytvynenko, one of the best technical product marketers I know and a champion of customer-facing communication on technology solutions. Anna has had a stellar career lending her skills to companies from Ukrainian startups to global tech consulting firms in the U.S., always with one goal in mind, to help tech professionals and teams find their voice. She's here to discuss how empathy leads to impact in the world of enterprise technology solutions. I hope you enjoy our conversation as Anna gives us her take on customer-centric communication and meeting technology teams where they are rather than where you want them to be. Anna, welcome to the conversation.
Hello, thanks for having me. I'm so excited.
Oh, so happy to have you. Yes, so we want to talk with you about voice of the customer and meeting enterprise technology customers where they are. So that's our topic today, and I want to ask you about pain points and how you talk to customers about solutions for enterprise tech tools and things like that. Yes, so glad to have you. And before we get started, we don't have to spend a ton of time on this, but I have to ask because people will be curious and they will want to know.
Of course.
How are things there for you in Ukraine?
Well, it's interesting. As they say, it's a curse to live in the interesting times of change, and we definitely have a lot of change here. So today it's been almost 6 hours that we don't have power, but it's just easier when it's summer. But, other than that, rockets flying, everything same as it has been for 3 years almost. And 8 years before that, it was a smaller part of Ukraine. Now everybody's in danger here. But the good news is that we can fight back now. Like, we can strike the rockets back at their territory, and that makes it a little bit easier.
So strange, and our thoughts are with you all the time. I think constantly every time I hear the news about you and your family, and how strange it must be to get up and go to work and sit at your computer every day and sort of maintain some semblance of a normal job. I can't even imagine what that's like. So
Yeah,
anyway,
we're
we want
joking that, nothing is an excuse for us to not do our job now. Like, we've survived coronavirus and the pandemic and the close down, and now we're surviving war. So virtually nothing can stop us from doing the job that we're doing here in Ukraine.
you guys continue to work and continue to actually into global economy, and it's pretty amazing. So anyway, you guys are amazing, and we certainly hope that all of this craziness comes to an end. We will see.
We do too. It's just too long and too many lives are lost. Everybody's using every opportunity to kind of say how we're surviving this, and that it's less and less of us to survive and fight back. And we definitely appreciate all the support that, especially the Americans are giving us. So yeah, and not just, the moral support or the emotional support that we have from our friends and people who just randomly support us without any, connections here in Ukraine. That's the most precious, I guess, when you can empathize with people even though you haven't met any one of us. And yeah, but other than that, the weapons and everything that keeps us alive up until now is most appreciated.
Well, we will leave it at that for now, but had to ask. People will be curious when they hear this. So,
Thank you for
so
asking.
sure, in an odd pivot, then we will talk about work and get back to business as usual here for a minute. So you and I, our background is that we work together at a consulting firm in which you were responsible for product marketing for tooling solutions primarily. And most of our audience was always enterprise technology customers, IT customers, and engineering teams and things like that. So we want to ask you about what those people need. We've noticed that there's a proclivity especially on the part of product companies and tool companies, to really focus mostly on their product or their tool, which is understandable. But that's not always where the customer is coming at it from. And you have always been, in my opinion, one of the best communicators in terms of kind of advocating for the customer when you're on the provider side, trying to put together a solution for them, or sell them the product that they need, or the tooling product that they need. So that's really what I wanted to get you on and chat about, was how you empathize with those customers, how you understand their user journeys and things like that. So maybe we could just start off by chatting a little bit about who those customers are, and what your experience is, meeting them and talking to them and marketing to them, and just help our audience understand who's your audience, who are the people that you are working with when you think about your customer.
Well, I have kind of long answer to this, and it's
Sure.
good that we're having a podcast here so I can talk. So
Absolutely. It's just a conversation. Yes.
it is. S- I will start first with the provider themselves. Because I'm coming from mostly from the consulting companies and custom development companies, everyone on the side usually tries to say that we can do anything. We can hire people, we can do custom job, whatever you need, we can do that. And this is a very bad approach to marketing, because selling everything to everyone, it will not get you anywhere, right? So I was always fighting this battle to, okay, let's narrow down the focus. Let's make a bet, right? Let's take a stake at something out of everything that we can do and start from there. And then we can build towards different capabilities, different, products and services, and build on top of that. But we need to be memorable for something very, very specific, because that is how you become, first your niche, and then you can grow and scale from that. But the level of noise that our average user, no matter if it's B2C or B2B, the level of noise that we have in our lives is just incredible. So to earn that attention, and the attention span is really, really short, you need to understand where they are, like what hurts them at this point so much that they're not just browsing this Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever social media they're using. They need to stop, because you are talking about the thing that is relevant to their context immediately, like at this point. I think I've shared this everywhere now. I'm really fond of Robert McKee, who is a great storyteller. He actually teaches how to write screenplays and basic story structure. And when I first read his book about scenario writing, I was astonished. I said, this is the best marketing book, even though it was not about marketing altogether. Like later in a couple of years, I've discovered that he had a book specifically for marketing storytellers in the age where where ads don't work, because shouting from every iron and every tube that you sell something, or I'm painting walls, that's what I'm selling now. It's not going to work unless the person understands that this wall needs to be painted. Like, you have to educate them that there is a pain point, this is how it solves, especially when it comes to a very complex enterprise level services, because there are a ton of people involved in that. Like, there is a whole system that has to move, and moving was just a single, I'm painting walls for your company. You're not going to move this whole structure. Like, you need to understand what triggered this need, why this need became so critical that the company found the budget for that, first of all, the need to engage some of the people working for this company to drive this solution selection, to do this effort, to put this effort into finding the solution, into reflecting on whatever the pain points are. Are those the symptoms? Are those the core conflict they're trying to solve? Like, there is a whole lot, and you have to approve all of that. You have to make sure that everybody's on board with it, and it takes a lot of people on their enterprise side. So without understanding that, like the whole mess that your customer is going through to just start Googling for your solution, you cannot communicate very well with them. So that is what I'm trying to understand when I'm talking mostly, at least with with people who are the customer facing inside the provider company. They know that, like, they will tell you definitely what happened before your customer came to you searching for the solution. Most of them will say, like, I've heard that a lot from our colleagues, ex-colleagues, like, when we start talking with the person on from the customer side, they say it hurts, like, in here, right? This is the pain point we're coming to solve for you. And then the first question that they were asking is that, okay, why is it hurting, right? And they're going deeper with this conversation. And usually it turns out that the solution they were looking for is not the right one. And if you can get this customer and, take them through the journey, just like a hero's arc, there is a mentor that takes the main hero to an outer space or magic world and helps them grow, helps them transform, helps them get the knowledge that they didn't have to solve the initial conflict. They help them face this conflict, solve it, and then come back to their fellow peers and bring the whole system to a new level. That's what we're doing. So this is why I'm saying that storytelling from the book writing perspective or screenplay perspective is the right approach to marketing as well, because you are doing the same thing. You're taking your customer to a different world so that they can get back to their colleagues and do the same for the whole company.
It's interesting that you mentioned the storytelling and the hero's arc. I'll give a plug for a marketer that I'm a big fan of, and his name's Donald Miller, and I'll plug his book. He's got a couple of books, but he's got a very interesting book called Building a Story Brand. And the entire book is about marketing, consulting services, professional services, and he starts with this analogy of the hero's arc, and he kind of draws a parallel between screenplays and Hollywood movie writing and things like that. And he basically explains that there's a few things that make this an important approach. The first one being primarily that our brains are evolved to sort of conserve energy. And so when you make people think, the harder that you make them think, the more apt they are to turn away from your message. They want something that's going to solve their problem, and they don't want to have to piece together cognitively the pieces of your solution, right? They want to get the sense very quickly that you have empathy for whatever the problem is that they're facing. And he likens that to the hero's journey. And he explains as well, and this is, I think, a really important point, that the mistake that a lot of providers make most of the time is that they sort of equate themselves with the person who has the challenge in the hero's journey, which is understandable because they're trying to do a job and they're trying to succeed at something as well. And so it's very easy to intuitively think of yourself as being in the hero's journey, but that's not the case, right? When you're the provider, it's your customer that you have to imagine being in the hero's journey, and you are that guide, the mentor, or the Obi-Wan Kenobi that they find to
Right.
take them off, and so that kind of changes the frame of how you approach the message there. And so if you haven't heard of Donald Miller, for our audience, definitely check him out and check out Building a Story Brand, because he explains how really ultimately sort of formulaic the story writing is, and you have these same archetypes over and over. And he explains that that's what human brains are wired to do. They're not wired to think very hard about the solution. They're wired to understand stories. And he explains how we communicate in stories. And so he explains how to position yourself as that guide and how to position your customer as the hero. And it makes a lot of sense. The hero often is sort of a reluctant hero. They don't really want to be the hero. They're not confident in themselves. They face a villain that they have to overcome. And so they're welcoming to that guide when they find the person who has been through the same thing earlier and who can communicate credibility by understanding their challenge, and they've got history having solved it before and things like that. So I love that storytelling angle, and I really enjoy this idea of sort of your customer as the hero, and going through this storytelling arc. So anyway, you just reminded me of that. But when you're thinking about communicating at a level of telling a story putting your customer front and center in that story, understanding and communicating to them that you understand what the challenge is that they're facing. How do you approach that? Like, what are some techniques that you use? What do you find yourself coming back to over and over when you're trying to meet that customer where they are?
Well, my most favorite technique would be really, really simple. I write a sentence that seems like I'm communicating the value to the customer, not to my team that I'm promoting, right? And I ask, so what? Why would they care about this sentence? What makes them stick, right? What is the nerve that I'm trying to get at? And this so what is really powerful when you keep asking it. Like, okay, here's why we're doing this. Okay, so what? Well, it helps them with this thing. Okay, so what? They can live with this thing, right? The pain can be something that historically is okay within the system, and the system doesn't move because of that pain. What makes that pain, really special and critical enough to, again, attract the budget, engage the people inside the org, and basically move the whole very, very large, very, very complex, very, very complicated and sophisticated structure, because you have people, you have tools, you have dozens of tools just inside one team, or one person in the team can use a ton of tool. So what makes him move and stop doing what he is accustomed to do? We're people, like we don't like that. We are accustomed to doing things this certain way. We hate change. We don't want to do that. Again, coming back to Robert McKee, he's saying what was completely revolutionary for me is that he says every story is dynamic because you don't really have one value. Like, it's not just the positive thing that our hero wants or our customer wants. You need to have that negative value. This is the pair from negative to positive, and the whole story, it moves from negative to positive every step of the way. And every step of the way, it makes the context of our hero that so that he cannot not move, right? He cannot choose being still. Is there something eventually every pain point comes down to the margins and the revenue, right? It hurted our revenue so much that we need to act upon it, or it's getting worse where we need to lay off people or close down business and whatnot. But before that, there are certain steps. And every step, every company, because of the culture, because of the history, because of the context, because of the market, because of the people who are decision makers, because of the people who are moving those decision makers and how they communicate within the company and the culture of the company, it will be a different story. Even if you are selling the product, which is very specific to a certain pain, the context of your customers would be very different, and the process of their decision making would be very different. But you need to understand, there is an example with my favorite DevOps. I don't know, for some reason, these are the people that I love promoting very much, because they're very complicated for the business sometimes, and the value to communicate the value of why DevOps should be in place, even though you can start or you can be an enterprise, DevOps is equally important to both of you. The problem with DevOps is usually we can do anything. Nobody cares about us, because if it works, nobody cares about them. If it doesn't work, everybody is blaming everyone, but they don't see that DevOps is the core problem. So I've worked with two different companies doing DevOps, and they both said we can do anything. But one of them worked with really large companies, enterprises, right? And their core value to their customers, because of their context, was predictability of the rollouts. Because you have a lot of teams, you need to sync. There is the angle and the value of just syncing all of the teams together. The second company was a smaller one. They had all the right talents. They could do the same thing that the first one has been doing, but they were more like a delivery people. They knew how to do stuff, and they were focused on very scalable architectures. They wanted to work with the tools and technologies that help companies scale. And their ideal customer turned out to be a stressed out CTO that really wants to go on vacation, but he or she can't because they're scaling, they're launching new products, or they're launching new businesses, they are launching new geographies. And of course they cannot do that because everything is on fire at that moment. So they decided their value prop is helping those CTOs go on vacation easily, even though the company is scaling at this moment, because you don't have any fires to put out. So both companies were in the same field, they were serving the same kind of customers, but the story behind that was really different. And moving from those pair of values, predictability and lack of control in the first case, and practically the same thing was the second company, but in a totally different angle and a totally different view. So this gives us an image that sticks. Okay, I'm scaling, I'm going to these guys. Okay, I have a ton of teams, I need people who are focused on this specific task because they're accumulating their knowledge and expertise in this specific sphere. That's how you stick, because just doing DevOps, if we said about both of the companies they're doing DevOps, nobody cares about that because nobody cares about the technology. They need the job done, and we need to figure out what kind of job they're doing, right?
Yes, well said. I couldn't agree more. And so we both have a lot of exposure to the DevOps space on my side, typically with training and learning solutions, and then products on your side. So I think it's interesting the way that you frame that in terms of thinking about getting away really almost from the business context altogether, although we certainly, acknowledge that we need business outcomes, we need positive ROI, financials matter, and ultimately everything's going to come back to that at some point. But when you think about the day to day, that's maybe not what people go to work thinking about. And I think it's very interesting to think about just the experience, the point that yes, we're human beings and somebody is having an experience. And so for that CTO, his experience is that he's being kept from going on vacation for whatever reason. And then you just start to follow the thread and pick it apart a little bit, right? Okay, why can he not get away? What is the challenge? What is keeping him back from being able to take that vacation time? That to me is a wonderful entry point. And it's the kind of entry point that you can think about with really any professional that you're trying to meet, trying to reach. And, it's interesting to think about, again, coming back to the hero's arc and thinking about the brain and the way that it's evolved, and thinking, we're evolved to be drawn to people who can give us a sense of security, and who can give us like social credibility even, so that if our reputational value goes up somehow for whatever reason, then that's someone we want to be allied with. And so we can think about these things and kind of craft our story to those a little bit. You're not necessarily trying to sell the hottest fanciest new DevOps tool, but you're going to provide something that allows them to be seen as a rock star, to be seen as a problem solver, to save them time, boost their efficiency, and ultimately get they or their boss on the road to taking that vacation time.
Or just
I like
enjoy
that.
what you're
Yeah.
doing every day,
Yes.
right? Because it could be a frustration to use a tech that is not doing the job that it needs to do, or it takes you ages while you can focus on something fun and creative, right?
Yeah, totally. And in the enterprise IT world, we think a lot about just quality of life. These jobs often are very stressful, right? And it's interesting because on the one hand, most of these folks have quite a degree of job security. Their skills are in demand. They're technologists, and they probably don't necessarily have a problem getting a job. And once that's out of the way, then we find that what these folks really think about a lot is, yes, they can get a job anywhere, but those jobs are uniformly difficult and stressful, and so that doesn't lead to the best quality of life. So what is the tool that is going to improve their quality of life? And I guess
to me, you can start to see how this is a bit of a different frame. It's a bit of a different way of having a conversation about what you're trying to sell or the solution you're trying to provide. And there's a lot of competing solutions and tools out there. So focusing on features and focusing on the engineering outcome, there's going to be multiple tools that do that, right? So it's really more about how do you get the stakeholder you care about, your internal customer or your market facing customer or your CTO or whatever, to have the experience that something just works and they don't have to think about, because that's really what they want, right? Like ultimately those people's customers, like you say, they generally don't think about the technology that's behind whatever the user experience is, and they really don't want to. They're having the experience because they're trying to get something done and they want it to get done and they want it to just work. And so putting that experience together is a bit of a different angle. Yeah. So let's talk about who these people are a little bit. So we refer to the orgs and the enterprise teams, and we understand that just in broad terms, these are enterprise technology customers, but maybe you could give us just an example or two, either from a specific tool perspective or a job role, or really any perspective that you want. But I'd be curious just to hear from your experience, like, what are some individual human roles that you have found yourself trying to communicate with, and who were those people and how did you connect with them?
Oh, I think I think everyone was on that list already, because the focus of the companies I work for is usually really broad. Those are custom service companies doing everything from custom development for web, mobile, and embedded, and AI, and the consulting part, and the coaching part, and just training. You and I work together on that end as well. So yeah, I'd say almost any role that is buying tools and technology consulting, which is now everyone. Like you cannot not use any tools to deliver the job. But it's interesting for me right now. AI is obviously a buzzword and a hype right now, but it's interesting as a service, as the product I'm promoting to me, because it reveals so much about human nature. All of the fears, all of the arguments that people bring forward about AI shows so much about who we are. What are we scared of? What do we want from life? How do we want our lives to work, and how do we want our work to work, right? And it's just interesting from the psychological perspective on how they put what they're afraid of. And because you hear a lot of that, AI will take your job and you're gonna be left out. And then there is another group that says, well, not AI, but people who know how to work with AI will take your job, definitely. And again,
Yes.
not really, right? There is place for everyone in this world. My mom, when I was a kid, my mom used to tell me that you can be whoever you want. Like you can literally just clean windows and that's it. But the way you do that, the the story that you put behind it, why you're in this business, why it matters for you, what is this value that you see, what is the negative value that you're, again, getting back to Robert McKee, what is the negative value you help your customers solve, and then what is the positive value that you leave behind after your job is done. And you can earn any money, you will find your customers, because there always will be people who want just a person writing a text for you, not an AI, because they feel they think they can tell the difference. But if you're working with AI in a correct way, no, you will not. But then this is the my belief, I guess. That is what I'm trying to promote in this world, is that your story matters much more than what you do. You will find the customers if you're certain in what you are doing, because you see value. If you see value, there is at least one more person out of our 8 billion people on this earth who will see the same value. And because you've come to this value not out of nothing, right? You had your experience, you have your expertise, you see your market in a certain kind of way, you feel this in a certain kind of way. And especially in the consulting business, when you don't have like a tool, right? Not a product, not a button that does something. When you sell your knowledge and experience, this is what matters. Your lens is something that no AI can recreate, because it will have to live through everything, not just your work experience, but your life experience, your people that you talk to, people that you met on the bus or, on the subway, and they can say something that will change your perspective altogether. So that kind of lens is really important, but it takes a lot of effort to reflect. And right now, working with with different companies trying to put together their position statement, we're coming from, we can do anything that our customer wants, to, okay, yeah, I think this matters in our business more than the rest of everything that we do. Okay, maybe we can start here. This matters, why? And then we go, so what, right? Again, why? So what? These are the main two questions that gets you to the core of why you're in this business. What are you trying to accomplish? What is it that you feel your business should become over the course of several years? And then AI or not AI or any other tool becomes just a mean to get there. And nobody cares about the means. Everybody cares about the journey spent together with someone who is interesting or, helpful to you in your journey. That mentee should be fun to be around in their kind of way. Every hero has their specific mentor. Like, you cannot exist separately. You have to find that voice that will be heard by certain types of people. And to understand that, again, with enterprise context, maybe this is kind of more complicated, but it's always a matter of calibrating. I think this is the best word. 15 years ago, I did a inside internal project in the company I've worked at that time. It was a management consulting company. They did also a bit of they sold a product that helped automated their consulting piece of work. And we've decided that we want to do a project on culture inside the company, and we did a corporate culture book. And the approach, because that was a really small team, about 50 people, the approach that we took, I just created a questionnaire of 10 questions, open questions, and they were sent out to everyone on the team, and everyone had to fill it out. And when I got the responses, the cool thing was that 80% of the keywords, like the phrases that were used in those responses, were practically the same. So people saw the same things, the same values inside the company, the values that they provided to their customers, how they treated customers, how they treated each other, what was fun about working there, what was not fun about working there. It all coincided. And that is usually the case for most of the companies, because the structure should only work if it's, if everyone fits in there. Otherwise, those people who will not fit into the general way of doing things, they will just be either fired or, they will quit because they don't fit. And everybody feels that, because we're people, right? And structure is always more powerful than just one element. So you need to accept it. It's nothing personal, right? It's just how structures work. So it takes an effort and a bit of reflection to scale this reflection level, right? To make sure that your marketing team understands how everyone speaks to the clients, and see what the core is of those communications. What are the keywords that every salesperson uses, even though they're not, enabled or trained in the one single way. So listening to how your salespeople talk to your customers is one source of that single piece, like the core, the foundation of your communication. Talking to your delivery people is the other one. Then listening to customers, again, I don't know, but I feel like a lot of times when we do customer interviews, we look for a specific story, and we just focus on that specific one story of one customer, and we try to scale that. That's not the approach that works to me. I think we should look at all of our customers, like very, very different ones, and understand what is an overlap in their stories, what is something that all of them are saying about you, and take that small piece and then scale out of that, because that is this core story that any company, even though from the from the external side they can seem very different, they still come to you for the same job or the same experience, and that is the core. That's something that we should take as a foundation to the marketing efforts and communication efforts.
Yes, so well said. So you made a variety of points there that I couldn't agree with more, and there's a couple that I just want to highlight. So, the first one is the aspect of culture. And we spend a lot of time here trying to draw the quantifiable value tie between high quality cultures and good workplace cultures and environments, and why they're so important. We know they're important at a human level, but it can be sometimes difficult to draw a business case around that. But what we find is that when there's a culture in which people are encouraged, and the systems and the structures that are built in place are obviously put together with thought and consideration around what the experience is. We are post COVID. We're already moving towards sort of a distributed knowledge worker environment where lots of people are telecommuting, working from home, and things like that. And a corollary of that, it seems to me, is that the boundary between work life and home life is either dissolving or it's just gone completely, right? Especially when you work with global teams and people are in different regions and time zones and things like that. We have to be available to our teams, and it can just be really hard to keep that boxed into 1 8-hour day. So what's the consequence there? The consequence is that this is now people's complete life. People's work and their job is intertwined with their experience of life. And I don't want to sound too abstract about it, but it's very true. And so people who are in leadership positions and who are responsible for setting the precedents and arranging the incentives and building the systems that we all work in, they can't not think about that, right? And it gets interesting, because when you start thinking about things like that, it's not just process or procedure or KPIs or things like that, but you run very quickly into this situation where you have to start thinking about things like values, and core principles, and things like that. Things that I think in the past were the purview really of people's personal reflections, and these were the things we think about when we're not at work. Right. And so it's kind of weird to me, how do we build things like core principles or our values into work? It's an interesting question. I remember some years back, really, when I was learning about um, lean manufacturing and the idea of Kaizen, as they say in Japan, or continuous improvement, and how, like, the translation of that term was that there's an ethic of continuous improvement, and that word always stuck with me. An ethic, it's like ethics. How are we talking about ethics at work? If you're a lawyer or a doctor or something like that, professional sectors like that obviously spend time thinking about professional ethics, but that's not really what we're talking about, right? We're talking about sort of a fundamental value, a fundamental ethic of trying to do something. And that is not something that you're ever going to be able to force on people from the top down, right? That depends on intrinsic factors and motivation from within. And that's only going to come about if people are on board with your system and they believe in what you're doing. And even just saying it like that, the idea that you're going to believe in something, I mean, these are getting very non-work sounding, or at least traditional, but that's the working environment that we're thinking about, and so I think, like, a lot of the points that you're making about trying to have empathy for the person that you're trying to solve for, these are the ways and the concepts in which we try to do that, right? You mentioned one other thing there that I just want to highlight, which is the collaboration between delivery people and salespeople. And in my opinion, if we're going to highlight those two roles, the reason that they're so important, and not that anybody's more important than another, but they're particularly important and particularly good collaborators as you're trying to perform product marketing or something like that. You know, a lot of times marketing teams are sort of siloed off from those departments. You know, delivery may not talk to those teams at all. Or, you know, they may be hit up every once in a while to kind of help write a case study or an experience report or something like that. But if you think about it, salespeople and delivery people are the people who are the closest to the customer. They're, you know, sales and account teams own the relationships primarily. You know, I've always thought of that as kind of the primary role of a salesperson is to be the one who owns the relationship with their customer. And then the delivery people obviously are the ones who are giving the customer the thing that they paid for. So those two people have very unique and really valuable perspectives, right? If you're trying to understand the customer. So as a solution provider or a marketer, those two people are always two of the ones that I always try to go talk to quickly and try to understand, because I know they're the experts on that customer relationship, not me. You know, I'm often a couple steps removed. And then the final thing that I wanted to highlight about the last portion of what you were saying was that we're focused on the hero's arc and the customer journey, but you also made an important point there, which is that there's a reflective element as well. You know, you have to kind of know yourself and understand what your own value is and understand what your place is and your own story is, so that you can begin not to make it about you, but so that you can understand the relationship between the story that you're living and the story of the person that you're trying to connect with. Because as you say, the human connection and the empathy is like the heart of what we're trying to do. So correct me if I got any of that wrong, but those are three things that I really liked about what you just said.
Yeah, honestly, to make it a little bit more practical and down to earth, you and your hero, you as a mentee and your hero as your customer, should meet somewhere, right? And this is how you meet. You understand, like, there's a very, I think, funny example because we laughed at that point. I'm mentoring small businesses in Ukraine for donation to Ukrainian army, and I had a girl who is a lawyer, and she's a new mom. She wants to get back in business, and she's desperately trying to understand what is it that she wants to do. And we were discussing her dream clients and who she wants to serve. And while we talked, we understood that her her core client that she really enjoys working with, because she feels a lot of like fulfillment and self-realization, is helping women that got recently divorced. And we were trying to understand what is the right channel for her to, because the amount of money she can put into promoting herself is limited. We were trying to understand what is the best application of that budget would be. And we were laughing, but probably the billboard right next to a daycare would be the right kind of place to say something about her, because that is where that woman has time in a day. And probably she is, well, at this point she may feel the needs to divorce because she doesn't like her life for some reason. And this is the time when she may be just focused on the surroundings, right, waiting for her kid to come out of the school or the daycare. She can see that billboard, and maybe with the right messaging there, this could be your urge to call that lawyer and see how it goes, and maybe this could be a change of your life. So it's a very funny example because it's like very, very down to earth and maybe not really, well, kind to man. I'm sorry for that. But this is the same approach you can take to enterprises as well. What is they are in the journey, they are going somewhere, they have this direction, they have this map, the route that they've planned for themselves. But at some point they have to meet you. You need to understand where, and that is something that your values can communicate to you. Where is the time in a day when your customer will have time for you, will have the attention for you, and what kind of message at this point, at this time of day, they're expecting from you, right? You can say the same thing about any tool or any product. The stressed out CTO will have this time somewhere in a day to browse through, not necessarily Google Ads, right, but some kind of forums or platforms or marketplaces where they can find the message that they are looking for, because there is something that makes their life miserable at their job this day, right? So this is basic empathy that helps you to get the enterprise level communications be still humane, you know.
Yeah, maybe advertise your time-saving CI/CD automation tool on the travel website that the
Right.
CTO is using to dream about that vacation.
Right.
um,
You get in
well,
the moods,
Anna,
right?
we're about out of time, but this has been a really interesting conversation. I just want to thank you. It's always a privilege to chat, and I think I'm very confident people have gotten an insight into why you're such a kind of a unique talent at messaging and customer narrative and meeting people where they are. It's really important. And we really don't have a successful leg to stand on unless we can develop a way to do that. And trying to broadcast that there's no solution we can't build, and we can do all things for all people is certainly not the way. But we've seen that a lot in our background. So I just love thinking about how can we start to take a slightly different approach, and that starts with the voice of the customer. So I'll give you the last word here. Any closing thoughts that you want to share?
Yeah, I was actually wanted to ask you because you in the learning side, you see how those values work, right? From the group of people that were assigned to your class from one enterprise, you will see somebody who is really motivated and in sync with the need and the general mood, right? And some of them will not. So I assume you are the best person to see how that change happens, you know, and how to overcome that resistance to change in the company.
Sure. Well, I mean, I don't know about the best person, but I definitely have opinions, and I'm learning all the time myself about this, and trying hard to be a student of human nature and a student of the business customer as well. But there's a few things I guess I would say in response to that. The first one comes back to this idea that our brains are developed to sort of take the most efficient route to understanding something. So that's a very impactful thing in the learning world right now, because traditional classroom deliveries or traditional training or on-demand training, e-learning, and things like that, they're often very one-sided. So they make this same mistake of not putting the customer or the learner first. And one of the ways they do that is to sort of deliver a barrage of information or a lot of lecture or something like that. The information might be valuable, and it might be good skills or good content that the learners need to understand and that they appreciate, but delivered in big chunks or long days or things like that is something that we're definitely seeing the learning and training customers, their appetite for is being reduced for that, right? So it's a creative challenge to figure out how can you deliver the valuable nuggets of learning in a shorter time frame and also in a more flexible way. And so that's something I've been doing a lot of work with, is um, giving the power to the customer so that they can craft their own schedules and mix and match different learning modalities. So there's an opportunity to practice and an opportunity to consume the lecture that they need, but in shorter, more flexible chunks, so they can kind of shuffle it around and do that in the order that they want. But then I think probably even the more important thing is that as we get asked to help deliver learning solutions for spaces that are completely getting more and more complicated, it's a bit of a clash, right? Because for really complex tools, really complex situations, on the one hand, those situations demand more content, not less, and that's a challenge. But at the same time, just delivering more content actually isn't the solution. What a good learning facilitator has to do is figure out how to sort of ignite curiosity in the learner, because you're never going to actually be able to deliver all of the things that they need in response to that complex situation. You have to try to empower them to maintain the commitment to figure out that situation on their own, and that's a completely different thing. So you do that by engaging learners early and often, and by challenging them, and by trying to find that trigger that's going to ignite their curiosity and get them interested, so that when your engagement with them is over, they continue to think about it, and they continue to be curious about it, and they continue to try to pursue the solution on their own, because ultimately they're the ones who are going to have to solve their problem. There's no way you're going to be able to solve it for them, especially in an enterprise situation where it's really nuanced, it's really complicated. Everybody's situation is a little bit different, so there's just literally no one size fits all learning solution that you can deliver. So in a way, I guess it's kind of helping learners understand how to learn and want to. So yeah, those are some thoughts I have, I guess.
This is awesome. Just to prove that you were right, my 2-year-old, she's 2 and 9 months. She has found my phone recently, and I have ChatGPT on my home screen. She clicked on it, and she asked it to tell her all about the planets. And while I was watching that, I was saying, okay, I need to tell this to Chris because that is the future of learning right here. Like, we have a completely new way of getting to the source of any types of knowledge. And this will change how, like, she will grow up learning that AI it's just there, right? She was born into the world where AI is right here on one click of a button away. And she is going to perceive this world, and she's going to be curious until, so I need to help her stay curious about the tool, the technology, and just show her around. Like, we're creating coloring books with her with the help of ChatGPT. She creates the scenarios, and I then print out the images that it creates for us. And she understands that, like, to me, it's just outer space, right? It's just sci-fi totally. To her, it's just so it happens, right? She has a different view on this world. She has a different context, just like any of our customers.
And she'll never know a world without an AI layer. It's really interesting.
Right.
Well, Anna, thank you so much. Hope to have you back sometime, but this has been, I think, exactly the conversation I was hoping to have. So really appreciate it. It's a privilege to be able to access some of your perspective. So we'll talk to you again later, I hope.
Thank you so much for challenging me. I really like to talk to you today.
Absolutely. See you later.
Bye.
Bye.